Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the Slow English channel. I am Daisy, a lecturer here in London, and as always, I am absolutely delighted to be spending this time with you all today. We have a rather special session prepared for you.
Hello, Daisy, and a big hello to our dedicated listeners joining us from all corners of the globe. I'm Peter Hanson, joining you from New York City. I'm truly energized to be here for another insightful and productive English learning session. It's always a pleasure to share these linguistic secrets.
The pleasure is all mine, Peter. Today, we are delving into a sophisticated and highly effective technique that can significantly enhance one's English speaking capabilities. It is known as shadowing. It's a method I often discuss in academic circles, but it is incredibly practical for any learner.
Shadowing. Now, that sounds quite intriguing, doesn't it? It has a bit of a mysterious ring to it. Daisy, for the benefit of our listeners who might be hearing this term for the first time, could you provide a bit of an overview regarding what this technique actually entails?
Certainly, Peter. Shadowing is essentially the practice of listening to a segment of English audio and simultaneously repeating it aloud, attempting to match the original speaker as closely as humanly possible. The goal is to minimize the delay between the audio and your own voice. You should envision your voice as the literal shadow of the recording.
Ah, I see exactly what you mean. So the student listens and then immediately attempts to mirror exactly what they hear, maintaining the same tempo, the same rhythm, and that all-important intonation. It's a real-time imitation game.
Precisely. One might compare it to being a parrot, though a parrot with a very specific academic purpose. It isn't merely about the mechanical repetition of words. Rather, it is about developing an intuitive feel for the natural cadence, the subtle nuances of pronunciation, and the overall flow of authentic English speech.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like a much more active and engaged way to learn than just passively listening to a lecture. Before we get into the nitty-gritty details of the process, Daisy, perhaps we should take a moment to remind our audience about the usual housekeeping.
You're quite right, Peter. My apologies for the oversight. Before we jump into the heart of our discussion, if you are finding our podcast helpful and enjoy these deep dives into language acquisition, please do take a second to hit that subscribe button. It truly assists us in reaching a wider audience of learners across the globe.
And don't forget to give us a thumbs up or a like on this episode if you find the content useful. Your support really does mean the world to us and keeps us motivated to produce these sessions. We're a community here, and we appreciate every one of you.
Indeed. Furthermore, if you have any pressing questions or perhaps some reflections on shadowing or any other English learning topics, please feel free to leave a comment below. We find your feedback immensely valuable and enjoy reading your perspectives.
All right, Daisy, let's get back to the matter at hand. Let's talk about the why. Why is this shadowing technique considered so effective for those striving to master the English language? What's the science behind the magic?
Well, Peter, shadowing operates on several distinct psychological and linguistic levels. Firstly, it is a formidable tool for improving pronunciation. By attempting to replicate the speaker's exact sounds, you become acutely aware of how English words are articulated in reality, which, as we know, can differ vastly from their orthographic representation on the page.
That's a great point. As we often say, English spelling can be a real headache because it's not always phonetic. Sometimes the way a word looks and the way it sounds are two completely different animals.
Spot on. Shadowing allows a learner to bypass those spelling traps and focus entirely on the auditory reality. Secondly, it drastically sharpens your listening comprehension. One must listen with intense concentration to the audio to repeat it with any degree of accuracy. It serves as a rigorous workout for both the ears and the vocal apparatus simultaneously.
I like that analogy. It's like going to the language gym. You're building up those listening muscles while training your mouth to move in new ways.
Exactly. And thirdly, shadowing assists in internalizing the natural rhythm and intonation of the language. Native speakers do not communicate in a flat, monotonous fashion. We utilize shifts in pitch, stress, and timing to convey emotion and specific meaning.
That's a crucial observation, Daisy. Intonation is one of those things that's notoriously difficult to pick up from a textbook. You can't really read rhythm off a page. You have to feel it and hear it in action.
Quite right. Finally, shadowing is an excellent catalyst for fluency. By practicing along with a native speaker, you become more comfortable with the physical act of forming English sentences, which leads to a much smoother and more confident delivery in actual conversation.
Wow, it sounds like shadowing is a real Swiss Army knife for language learners. So, for our listeners who are ready to dive in, what's the game plan? How do they actually start using this technique? Walk us through the first steps.
The foundational step is to identify suitable audio material. It is paramount to select something that aligns with your current proficiency level or perhaps sits just a fraction above it. If the material is excessively complex, it can quickly lead to feelings of frustration and demotivation.
That's sound advice. You want a challenge, but you don't want to feel like you're drowning. What kind of specific audio materials would you recommend, Daisy? Any personal favorites?
There are numerous avenues to explore. Short podcasts specifically tailored for English learners are excellent, as the speakers typically enunciate clearly and adopt a slightly more measured pace. Short clips from television dramas or films can also be effective, provided the dialogue is distinct. Even audiobooks are a wonderful resource, particularly if you have the transcript to refer to.
Having a transcript seems like a real game changer, especially for folks who are just starting out. It gives you that visual anchor while you navigate the sounds.
It is indeed an invaluable tool. With a transcript, you can follow along visually while you listen and shadow. This helps bridge the connection between the sounds you are producing and the written word, ensuring you don't miss any subtle contractions or linking sounds.
Okay, so step 1 is finding the right material and maybe a transcript. What's step 2 on the road to mastery?
Step 2 involves listening to a brief section of the audio without attempting to shadow it initially. The goal is simply to gain a general comprehension of the context and the message being conveyed. You want to get the lay of the land before you start climbing.
Got it. So get familiar with the content first so you're not blindsided by the meaning while you're trying to focus on the sounds. That makes perfect sense. What's next?
Step 3 is where the actual shadowing begins. Play the audio again, focusing on just a short sentence or two at a time, and attempt to repeat exactly what you hear in real time. Do not be concerned with perfection in the early stages. Your primary focus should be on mirroring the rhythm and the sounds as best you can.
So we're essentially trying to be a vocal shadow, following just a split second behind the original voice. It's almost like a dance.
That's a lovely way to put it, Peter. Now, step 4 is arguably the most important: repetition. You must revisit that same short segment of audio and shadow it repeatedly. With each iteration, you will likely discern new details in the pronunciation or subtle shifts in stress that you missed previously.
Repetition is the mother of all learning, as the old saying goes. It's how we move skills from our conscious mind into our muscle memory. I'm assuming step 5 involves scaling up.
Precisely. Step 5 is to gradually increase the length of the audio segments you are shadowing. Once you've mastered shorter sentences, challenge yourself with longer phrases, and eventually try to shadow entire paragraphs without stopping. It's a wonderful way to build stamina and confidence.
That sounds like a great progression. It's like training for a marathon. You start with a few blocks and work your way up to the full distance. What about step 6?
Step 6 is a bit more daring. Record yourself shadowing and then compare it to the original audio. This can be a truly eye-opening, or rather, ear-opening experience. It allows you to objectively identify discrepancies in your own pronunciation or intonation that you might not notice while you're in the middle of speaking.
Man, that's a brave step. I know a lot of people, myself included, who absolutely cringe when they hear a recording of their own voice. It can be pretty intimidating.
It can be slightly uncomfortable, I admit. However, it is an incredibly potent diagnostic tool. It helps you pinpoint exactly where you need to focus your efforts. And remember, these recordings are entirely private. They are merely a mirror for your own personal growth.
That's a good way to look at it. It's just a private feedback loop. So what's the final piece of the puzzle? Step 7?
Step 7, Peter, is the most fundamental of all. Be patient and persistent. Mastery of the shadowing technique and language in general takes time. You won't wake up sounding like a native speaker tomorrow morning, but with consistent daily practice, the improvement in your fluency and listening skills will be undeniable.
So just to recap for our listeners, find the right audio, listen first, shadow short bursts, repeat, increase the length, record yourself, and stay patient. That is a rock-solid roadmap, Daisy. I'm sure our audience will find it immensely helpful.
Now, Peter, given your extensive experience as a mentor, do you have any additional tips for our listeners to help them maximize their shadowing sessions?
I sure do. One big tip is to really zero in on the physical production of the sounds. Pay close attention to the way the speaker might be moving their mouth or tongue. Even if you're just listening, try to visualize and imitate those physical movements. It makes the language more tangible.
That's a brilliant suggestion, Peter. It's about developing that physical connection to the language, almost like an athlete would.
Exactly. Another thing is, don't get hung up on understanding every single word when you're first starting out. The priority at this stage is the music of the language, the sounds, and the rhythm. You can always hit the books and look up the vocabulary later on.
That is such an important point. I often see students get derailed by a single unfamiliar word, and it completely disrupts their momentum. It is far better to maintain the flow and return to the vocabulary later.
Right on. And my third tip would be to mix it up. Don't just stick to one type of audio. Experiment with podcasts, news reports, interviews, or even songs. Every different genre will expose you to new vocabulary and different speaking styles, which keeps things fresh and interesting.
A fantastic idea. Variety is indeed the spice of life, and it ensures that your learning remains a vibrant and engaging process. It prevents the sessions from becoming a chore.
And finally, make it a habit. Even just 10 or 15 minutes of focused shadowing a few times a week is much more effective than a 3-hour marathon once a month. Consistency is the secret sauce in language learning.
I couldn't agree more. Consistency is the bedrock of progress. Now, Peter, in your view, what are some of the most common pitfalls or mistakes that learners might encounter when they attempt to shadow?
That's a great question. I'd say the number one mistake is picking material that's just too hard. As we said before, if you're constantly falling behind or getting lost, you're going to get discouraged and probably quit. It's much better to start with something easy and build that sense of success.
Indeed, building confidence early on is vital. What else should they look out for?
Another trap is focusing too much on individual words and losing sight of the overall melody. Remember, shadowing isn't about being a dictionary, it's about being an orchestra. You want to mimic the rise and fall of the speech, not just hit the individual notes.
I love that. Mimic the melody, not just the notes. That is an excellent mantra for any learner. Are there any other mistakes to avoid?
Well, just being too passive. Shadowing requires intense focus. If you're just muttering words while thinking about what you want for dinner, you're not going to see the benefits. You have to really lean into the effort. It's a mental workout as much as a vocal one.
It truly is. It demands one's full presence. And I suppose many learners might feel disheartened if they don't sound perfectly like a native speaker immediately. It's important to manage those expectations.
Absolutely, Daisy. Perfection is the enemy of progress. The goal isn't to become a perfect carbon copy of the speaker. The goal is to improve your own communication skills. Be patient with yourself and celebrate the small wins.
Wise words indeed. Every minute of practice is a step forward. Now, Peter, perhaps we could provide a brief demonstration for our listeners. I'll provide a short sentence and you can show us what a shadowing attempt looks like.
I'm game. Let's do it. What's the sentence?
Let's use a classic. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. How was that? I tried to stay right on your heels.
That was superb, Peter. You matched my cadence and emphasis perfectly. I hope our listeners could hear how closely you were following. It shows that even for a native speaker like yourself, it requires a certain level of concentration to match someone else's rhythm.
It really does. You definitely feel more connected to the language when you're actively trying to mirror it like that. It helps build that muscle memory we keep talking about.
Exactly. Now, for our listeners who are eager to begin, what specific resources would you recommend for different proficiency levels? Let's start with the beginners.
For beginners, I definitely point them toward podcasts designed for ESL learners. There are some great ones out there where the speakers are very deliberate and clear. Look for keywords like ESL or Learning English in your podcast app.
A sensible starting point. And for those at an intermediate level?
Intermediate learners can start stepping up to short news clips or perhaps interviews with public figures who have very clear speaking styles. They might also try shadowing specific scenes from sitcoms where the language is natural but relatively straightforward.
And for our advanced learners who are looking for a real challenge?
Oh, for the advanced folks, the sky's the limit. Try shadowing academic lectures on platforms like TED or even fast-paced debates. You can even try to shadow more complex, nuanced dialogue in movies where characters use a lot of slang or idiomatic expressions. That's where you really fine-tune the subtle aspects of the language.
That sounds like quite a rigorous exercise for the ears, but as you say, it's the best way to achieve that polished, natural sound.
It sure is. So, Daisy, as we look to wrap things up today, what's the one golden rule or key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with regarding the shadowing technique?
I would say the key takeaway is that shadowing is an inherently active and powerful method for refining your pronunciation, listening, and fluency. It requires dedication and a bit of patience, but the long-term benefits for your confidence and speaking ability are truly transformative. So do not be afraid to give it a try. Repeat like a native.
That's fantastic advice, Daisy. Thank you so much for having me on the show today to discuss this. I'm actually feeling inspired to incorporate some shadowing into my own language studies.
You are most welcome, Peter. It's been an absolute joy having you. And to our wonderful listeners, we truly encourage you to give this a go. Start at your own pace, be kind to yourself, and keep at it. You will be astonished at the progress you can make over time.
And that brings us to the end of another episode here on the Slow English channel. Daisy, it's always a pleasure chatting with you.
The pleasure has been entirely mine, Peter, and a massive thank you to all of you for tuning in. We hope this session has been enlightening. Before we depart, shall we give one final reminder?
You bet. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future sessions. And feel free to share this episode with anyone you know who's on their own English learning journey. The more the merrier.
Indeed, please do share your thoughts in the comments, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Until then, keep practicing, stay curious, and happy shadowing.
Goodbye for now, everyone.
Goodbye.